joking.
Let's start with trade. The situation has been terrible, hasn't it, for the last few years for Northern Ireland? Trees not able to go back and forth, plants, sausages, subject.
Yeah.
I mean, it's been pretty bad, hasn't it?
It's been bad, and of course now there's this wonderful image that everything is normal, everything is back to normal, this green lane. Well, of course, if everything's back to normal, you don't need a green lane at all. You just need a business in Bristol to be able to trade with Belfast the same way they would trade with Birmingham. That's not going to happen.
Yeah, I mean...
It is better, there's no doubt about it.
Yeah,
it will be less bureaucracy.
The Green Lane is better. But I heard Sunak in the Commons saying that it wouldn't stop all checks. Still about 5% of goods would be subject to some degree of check. So it's still not going to be the same as somebody in Bristol selling goods to Manchester or the Isle of Skye, is it? No,
it's not. And you see, the fundamental issue is... Anyway, and it really does make me quite annoyed and sad and angry that we're almost representing the fact that the EU has given us something as some great, wonderful victory for Rishi Sunak. Now, yes, they have given some things, but there are things that we should never, first of all, have given away, but also now we had the opportunity to really say, this protocol has to go. We need to get Northern Ireland fully integrated back into the rest of the UK. We're not going to get that. To be fair, they are going to get rid of quite a lot of the law that's already been brought in, the numbers of trade regulations. And they have tried to change the idea that somehow it's all going to be okay because the executive in Northern Ireland will be having a look at it and be able to. But you know how many of these regulations in trade change. How are they really going to look at each one? And even if they do look at it and they get the 30 members to say we don't like this, it's not clear what then happens and who really can stop it. And I don't think that there is a veto for the government.
No, I don't either. That will become clearer over the course of the next few days. Who do you blame for this mess in the first place?
Oh, I blame Theresa May, and I find it quite hypocritical of her getting up and whittering on about how wonderful this was and how they all must back Rishi, because she was the one who actually sold to the EU the idea that somehow the border, this whole idea about a hard border. And the really sad thing is that even in the last week or so, there have been alternative arrangements come out that would have actually put anything in Northern Ireland under British law, who are then going to make sure that EU law is carried out.
The European Parliament had a plan for that. Now, I'm going to cut live to Jacob Rees-Mogg. Jacob Rees-Mogg has just left the House of Commons. If you're a constituent, he has done his day's work. Jacob is on his way, because he's going to be sitting in this chair in about 20 minutes' time, presenting the first Jacob Rees-Mogg show. And here he is. Here's Jacob. He's just about to walk over Lambeth Bridge. He's on his way to this chair. It's going to be his first show tonight. He's going to be with GBNews Monday to Thursday, 8 till 9, every evening. And I spoke to Jacob earlier on this afternoon, and he's really excited about doing this. And he's somebody, I've known him for a few years. He's always courteous. He's always kind. He will always listen politely to the other side of the argument. All I can say, Jacob, is pick up the step, dear boy. You're going to be needed here very, very shortly. Jacob Rees-Mogg. And he is always very courteous and kind, isn't he?
He's a lovely person. You know, I mean, he really is a nice person. And I hope he does very well.
I think he will. I interrupted you. I'm sorry, but I thought it was worth it.
I think you've got the point. I mean, but I do think the Democratic Party,
this is all avoidable.
The 7 tests have to be followed, and I think the DUP will take a little bit of time. They'll get some lawyers to look at it, and it is, the devil is in the detail. And I think the warm words and the whole way that the thing was today was just, I find it really quite. I just sort of sad that Rishi felt he had to go to that extent of involving our king.
I'm going to come to that. But before I do, just sticking, if I may, for a little bit with Northern Ireland. If the DUP don't accept this and say, no, it really isn't good enough, we're staying under the auspices of the European Court of Justice, and I thought Ursula von der Leyen could not have been clearer. And I'm betting somewhere deep in that text, it's going to confirm that suspicion that you and I both have and that she was so clear about. If the DUP don't go back into any form of power sharing agreement, if Stormont doesn't reopen, what on earth happens in Northern Ireland?
Well, I think the government has already, in the last month or so, been bringing in legislation. I mean, we've got, just today in the Lords, we had not just the elections bill about putting off the election for another year, but also bringing in the organ donation bill. That was being very much pushed by a young lad, their family, pushing it. We would be the same as the rest of the United Kingdom. That's been put through today, all in one day. We got there when the government has wanted to, they have legislated for Northern Ireland over the past few years on abortion, on same-sex marriage, on all sorts of things. They can do it, and I think. It was interesting today, Peter Hean actually asked a question of the Secretary of State's minister in the Lords as to what were they going to do, could they not make it easier now for a form of direct rule? I mean, integration, to me, is the way forward.
Yeah, I mean, logically, if the devolution path, and we've been down this road before, back in the 70s, but if the devolution path cannot be made to work under the terms of the Belfast Agreement, it is a case of direct rule, isn't it? Yes, and of course, with huge protests from Sinn Féin and others.
People always say, oh, well, then, of course, you'd have to have the Irish government involvement. Well, why? Why would we have to have it? And also, the reality is that, and I've said this so many times, but what other country would be making such a wonderful thing out of the fact that they have allowed the EU to, they've got back just a little bit more of their control over part of their own country. It is unbelievable.
No, I know, that is the absolute mess. And by the way, I'm with you. I think that Theresa May bears a very heavy responsibility for all of this. And her chief negotiator, Ollie Robbins, who is, of course, now Lord Robbins
I haven't seen him
in the upper house with you as a reward for the great work he's done for this country. Now, I was astonished over the weekend. I was absolutely astonished to think that any form of political framework or agreement would have the name Windsor attached to it. And then I saw in the Mail on Sunday there'd been a proposed meeting between the King and Commission President Ursula von der Leyen. Had been scheduled for the weekend, but that meeting had been put off. So I thought this morning, well, maybe they've dropped the idea of Windsor. Maybe she isn't actually going to meet the King on this particular trip. How do you feel about all of this?
Oh, I was very angry, and I tweeted about it right away. I just think it's, the word Windsor is associated around the world with our royal family. I know it wasn't the actual discussions weren't held in Windsor Castle, but that is the way it will be presented. And to bring His Majesty the King into something so political, I mean, if he'd wanted to meet her, I'm sure that could have been arranged. But to have it on the day when this very, very difficult, all of this was being publicly aired for the first time, and let's not forget that everybody's been kept in secret. This has all been so secret. Nobody's known anything about this. And suddenly it's all orchestrated and King Charles is brought into this. And I think, I said, I genuinely think that Rishi Sunak has not thought this through and has been badly advised. I'm surprised that Buckingham Palace went along with it. However, I think now there is a real danger for Rishi Sunak. I think that he will live to regret this.
What about the King? Will the King live to regret this? Are we beginning
a royalist.
to see his views?
I'm a staunch royalist, and so are most people in Northern Ireland.
Good King Billy. Good King Billy and all of that.
And this is what's so sad, that they're actually so patronising that they thought that, if we call it the Windsor document and if we have the King involved, that all those people, who come out with their union flags anytime there's a royal visit will sort of say, oh, this must be all right. Just so patronising. Isn't the danger, Kate, that people like you and I, and most of the country who are strongly pro the royal family, the role that it's played. I mean, the Queen, of course, popularised the monarchy in the most astonishing way. Well, Her Majesty the Queen, the late Majesty, would never have done this. We just know that. I agree with you. No, I agree with you. Isn't there a danger that this man as King starts to show his political colours, and that many of us who are naturally pro-monarchy begin to start to ask ourselves some serious questions? Well, I hope not, in the sense that, the monarchy has lasted for a very long time. King Charles won't last forever. You know, in a way, we have to sort of look at this in terms of the long game. But you're right, there will be a lot of people questioning and watching every single thing that King Charles does from now on, because he did give a promise when he took over that he would speak only about things that you know, were not political, and this was so political. This was really, really political today, and I think there will be a lot of people in the country who are maybe not interested in Northern Ireland, maybe not interested in the protocol, but will have seen this as something that was just a step too far for him, King, and blame the Prime Minister for getting us into it.
A lot of them naturally would be royalists. Now, the other aspect of this, as we look ahead, you know, the battles that we've been involved in since that referendum back in 2016.
I know, 7 years.
I know. Where's the time gone? And we're still engaged with these battles, as we're seeing today. Keir Starmer's intervention was interesting. Keir Starmer has said that this is significantly better than it was before, and that the Labour Party will put country before party in voting for this agreement. What do you trust the Labour Party, or
well,
do they?
I think I've made my views known before on Keir Starmer. Yeah. I'm afraid I would not trust him on the EU as far as the end of this room, and it's quite a small room we're in. And I really wouldn't, because I know how he behaved during the negotiations when we were trying to get the bills through Parliament, and he will capitalise this. And I do think that actually the EU have been more willing perhaps to go along with some of these things, changes with Rishi Sunak, because they know that the Conservatives are 25 points, I think, behind. There's likely to be a Labour government, and a Labour government will not be trying to distance itself from the EU. It's dangerous, and I don't think Keir has done himself any favours by the way he's going to behave. Alignment.